The basement door. My parents live next door to a small red house. Our backyard faces the side of their house, which has a deck and 2 large windows. Around front there were always at least 3 cars parked outside. Oddly enough, in the 10 years I lived there I never saw anyone enter or leave. Once when I was 12 I saw shadows thrown against the far wall that was visible through one of the windows. When my sister moved out I took her bedroom, a large, open converted space in the basement, which had a door and an outdoor stairwell which led to the backyard. The door had a small window on it which my sister had covered with a Pulp Fiction poster. I redecorated and replaced the poster with some of those sheer half-curtain things. The way the room was set up, if I was lying in bed or sitting on the couch, I was facing the door. When I first moved down there I noticed that sometimes, at night, I would hear the sound of leaves crunching in the stairwell. I chalked it up to my cat, who liked to roam the neighborhood. I had no reason to suspect otherwise until a few weeks later. One night, when my parents were away on business, my boyfriend and I were sitting on the couch smoking. Suddenly he got really stiff and was just staring at the window. I asked him what was wrong and he said, "I just saw a camera flash." I kind of just laughed it off and chalked it up to him being high. Who would want a picture of 2 people getting stoned? Still, the seeds of paranoia had been sown, and it wasn't easy to get settled down for sleep that night. I kept looking at the gap between the curtains. There was no light at the bottom of the stairs, so if someone really was down there I'd be none the wiser. At around 3, I heard the distinct sound of leaves under heavy boots. Definitely not a cat. I don't know what made me decide the best course of action was for me, standing all of 5 feet 3 inches to confront a potential stalker myself. I didn't even put shoes on. I threw the door open. There was no one in the stairwell, so I ran up the stairs and into the backyard. Standing there was a man in his mid-40s, maybe 6 feet tall and wearing one of those mechanic jumpsuits. He was holding a clunky, outdated digital camera. We stood there for a second just looking at each other. He seemed confused to see me. After what felt like an eternity I remembered how to speak. "What the fuck are you doing?" My voice seemed to startle him and he immediately turned and ran through my backyard towards the red house and into the dark. After that, I didn't see any strange flashes of light or hear any crunchy leaf noises. It really freaks me out to think how many nights he could have just been standing there in the dark, watching me. Creepy photographer. Let's not meet. Delivering pizza to the basement. About 2 years ago, I used to work part-time at a popular pizza chain as a delivery driver. I had a full-time job during the day, so the shift at the pizza place would be from 6 p.m. to 12 p.m. I enjoyed the job for the fact that I made good money and it was easy, but I hated working at night because it was dangerous. One night we got a call 30 minutes before closing for a delivery in the worst part of town. I was stuck taking the order since my manager sent the other driver home early because it was a slow night. I hurriedly headed out to deliver the pizza. About 20 minutes later, my GPS said I had arrived. I couldn't read the house number as it was pitch dark and none of the houses had their porch light on. As safety, I called the customer to ask if they could turn on their light. He didn't answer until the 6th ring. He tells me his house has the 2 trash bin next to curb and that the light is broken so he can't turn it on. I start walking through the front yard to the front door when I see a man staring at me through the window. I yell out hello to him but no reaction. He doesn't even move to open the door. I'm getting goosebumps now and I decide to turn around and go back to my car. I call the customer again to come get his pizza from my car. He tells me in a slow creepy voice to ignore his roommate. He said the door is unlocked if I could take the pizza to the basement because he rents the bottom floor. As I'm on the phone, I could make out a small light from the window. The man that was staring me earlier was on the phone talking to me. I hung up and took off. By the time I got back to the restaurant, phones were turned over. Any complaints would have to wait till the next day. I'm not delivering to any basements and I'm taking your pizza home for dinner. Hashtag let's not meet again, ever. The hotel basement. This happened in the summer of 2010, when I was just entering my teenage years. My family took a trip to a really nice hotel in the city. I can't really remember why we decided to take the trip, but I remember a lot of family friends coming with and staying in adjacent rooms. I've never asked my parents, and it's not really important to the story. To preface, I am a bit of scaredy cat and always have been. I'm a pretty skinny, fragile kid, so I get spooked pretty easily. Even now. This, however, was almost definitely not me freaking myself out like I normally did. Looking back, I'm incredibly lucky I trusted my instincts. This hotel had a strange design to it. The lobby was actually on the 4th floor, not the bottom floor, which I found strange. To access the lobby, you had to use the elevator. There was no way for you to get to it from the stairs. This information would have been nice before everything happened, as you'll find out. The hotel was organized in a square shape. Every floor was lined with a balcony, and you could look down into the lobby and cafe area from your floor. Essentially, if you were walking to your room, you could be seen from anyone that was on your floor if they just stepped out of their room and looked around. I always was afraid I'd fall over the balcony and sail down 8 stories to my death, but they were high enough to a point where I wasn't too concerned for my safety. The first day or two was nice. My friends and I hung out and played cards all day. Or we watched whatever was on TV. At night, we'd explore the halls of the hotel and tell each other ghost stories. It was a really fun time, even though I didn't fully understand why we were there. On the 3rd day, though, things got strange fast. I woke up to the sound of screaming coming from outside my door. Now, because of the hotel's design I mentioned, sounds from the lobby would echo all the way up to the top of the building. So, when I walked outside to investigate, I immediately looked over the balcony to see what the commotion was about. I saw a girl laying on the ground, eggs and milk splattered everywhere around her. People were rushing to help her, and I heard a couple people telling each other to call 911. It seemed like the girl was unconscious. Maybe she had passed out or something. I scanned the lobby, and saw that my family and a couple of my friends were in the lobby getting breakfast, all staring at the event in front of them. I decided I'd rush down to meet them to find out what had happened. The elevator was on the opposite side of my floor, so I took the stairwell located right next to my room. We were on the 7th or 8th floor, so I knew I only had to take about 4 flights down. Not a big deal. I descended for a little while, looking for the number 4 on the wall or the letter L. I passed floor 5, ready to find a door to the lobby. I took about 2 more flights of steps before realizing that there hadn't been a door for the 4th floor, nor had there been a door for the 3rd or 2nd. Now, at this point I probably should have turned back, but I continued down because I was tired and didn't want to climb back up. There were some weird side hallways that went into pitch black areas with a bunch of piping and wiring. And though I was curious to explore, I passed them by. I quickly hit the bottom floor, a dimly lit and cold room with cinder block walls and concrete floors. In front of me was a set of double doors. I hesitated at first, but I assumed that this was just another way back to the lobby, so I opened them and entered. Behind the doors was a massive warehouse-type room, probably the size of a smaller basketball stadium. The only light coming in was from the stairwell behind me, so I really wasn't able to see much. Stairs were stacked and covered in plastic wrap, tables lined the wall, and in the distance I thought I could see boxes stacked and lined against the wall as well. I was probably the storage room for the hotel. I looked around and saw an elevator in the back of the room, so I made my way towards it. I closed the door to the stairwell and began to walk in the dim light. The room was super muggy and dusty, and it seemed like nobody had been down there in a long time. As I got closer to the elevator, I noticed it was a little bigger than the elevators in the lobby and other floors. I pressed the up button, but got no response. There was a card swiper next to the button. Must have been for employees only, I thought. I turned back towards the stairwell doors, making my way past the chairs and tables along the wall. When I got to the door, I gave it a tug. Locked. Of course. This is when things started to hit me, and I realized I was stuck in the dark, dusty basement of a hotel. I didn't have a phone, because my parents wouldn't let me get one until I graduated middle school, so I couldn't call anyone. Everyone likely assumed I was still asleep in the room, so I began to freak out believing that nobody was going to look for me. I searched around the warehouse, looking for other ways out. Some areas of the place were better lit than others. So I looked around in areas I could see first before starting on the darker side of the room. There was one other set of doors that I found, but it happened to be locked as well. I began to cry, scared that nobody would ever find me in this basement. I swear it felt like hours, but I think only a handful minutes passed before I heard the door creak open. It wasn't the door from the stairwell, rather, the second door I had found. A slim, middle-aged man in a lab coat came out of the doors. Now, if this was 21-year-old me seeing this man, I would be very confused as to why this guy was wearing a lab coat in a hotel. I was only 12 or 13 at the time, so I immediately was relieved at the sight of an adult who looked smart. I approached him, tears in my eyes, and he immediately looked surprised to see me. As you'd expect, "What are you doing down here?" he yelled. "I got lost on my way down to the lobby and I've been locked in here. Do you have a key?" I was shaking, eager to get out of there. He didn't answer my key question, and instead he said, "I know a way out of here, follow me." He began to walk towards the doors with the stairwell, and I followed, relieved that someone had finally come to save me. We approached the doors, and I began to reach for the handle, but he continued walking. "Isn't it right here?" I asked him. I will never forget the look on his face when I said that. He looked nervous, and though it was dim, I could see sweat glistening from his forehead and behind his glasses. "No, this way," he said sternly. I continued to follow him, but I was now nervous myself. We had passed the door to the stairs and were now headed toward a darker side of the basement, away from the elevators. He looked like he had no clue where he was leading me, as he kept checking around him, almost as if he was taking in his surroundings for the first time. We turned a corner and began walking towards the boxes, a dead end. I immediately froze, realizing that something was very, very wrong. This guy had no idea where he was going, nor did he appear to work at the hotel. I said, my voice shaking, "Okay, where are we going?" He turned and said, "This way, just follow me." I knew that there were no doors by those boxes. I had checked there first after I found out the stairwell door was locked. I want to thank whatever God is up there for gifting me with the idea I had next. I started yelling, as loud as I could. I yelled so loud I gave myself a headache. The man, irritated and plugging his ears, began yelling back at me, "What are you doing? Be quiet." I continued to yell. I don't even remember how long I was yelling. Finally, the man snapped, and began quickly walking towards me. I went in a full sprint towards the stairwell doors, hoping to God they'd somehow be magically open. He didn't run after me, he walked sternly behind me, muttering things like, "Stupid fucker," and other kind compliments. I was about 5 feet from the door when somebody burst through, my savior, a hotel janitor who had heard the screaming from the stairwell. He saw the situation, me and some random guy in a lab coat in a locked basement, and immediately told me to get behind him. The janitor asked me who the man was. I said I had no idea, that he had come in through the door on the other side of the room, and I pointed to the door. The janitor quickly radioed into the desk that he had found a child in the basement, and quietly, so that I wouldn't hear, he said, "This man came from outside, get security," or something like that. The man in the lab coat started trying to argue with the janitor, claiming that he simply was looking for a bathroom. The janitor clearly wasn't buying it, and kept saying things like, "Wait till security gets here and talk to them about it." I was standing beside him the whole time, trying to take in what was happening, confused out of my mind. Eventually, an employee from the front desk arrived and took me back up the steps to the lobby, where I met with my family, who surprisingly had no idea I was missing. I told them the story, crying and shaking, and they hugged me tightly, thanking the employee over and over for their help. I never got to thank that janitor, though, looking back now, I have absolutely no clue what that man was doing in the basement. I don't have any information as to what happened afterwards, or who he was. I know for a fact that the incident with the girl in the lobby was unrelated, something about low blood sugar. Not sure. I've thought about that day a lot, and the only explanation I can put together is that the door I had found in the basement lead to the streets of the city, where he must have wandered in from. I have no clue what his intentions were, why he was wearing a lab coat, or why he chose to pretend to know a way out. To be frank, this could have just been a huge misunderstanding of some sort, and I just chose a really bad time to get lost. But all I know for sure is if I hadn't screamed my lungs out, I might not have been telling this story the same way, or at all. So, strange man in a lab coat wandering around a dark, dusty hotel basement, let's not meet.